BBC Radio Surrey.
It has also brought huge challenges, though, for primary school teachers, as our producer Joshua Searle has been finding out.
It's hard enough catching up with a friend using an internet video call. But can you imagine trying to teach using it?
I'm Holly Orford and I teach in reception class at Rowledge Primary School.
Just talk me through your setup in terms of how you're doing it. So you're teaching partly over, is it Zoom, and then partly in class, is that right?
Yeah, so having been only a one-form entry at Rowledge, I am the only teacher in Year R. So I need to work out when I'm in the class and when I can be available on Zoom, and I'm doing a bit of both.
And so how many children are you having to teach over Zoom at the moment?
Between 15 and 20. I don't do them all at once. I try and split them into two, because you can imagine having 50, 20 4 and 5 year olds on Zoom is quite tricky. So I'm splitting them up, and I'm doing small group sessions throughout the week as well, in groups of 4 and 5, to really get to know what they're getting up to at home.
And so you've got some of the children in school who you're teaching, and then some of them over Zoom. How are you separating it? Do you just literally go into like a little cupboard and then start teaching them over Zoom? How does it work?
Yeah, so at Rowledge outside, we've got a Wendy house, which used to be used for the children as kind of a role play area. They used to turn it into shops and things. So I've taken that and turned it into a bit of an office. Luckily, it's got electricity and things out there anyway. It's just outside the classroom, so it's perfect. It means that I can go into the classroom when I'm needed and then nip out into the little office outside and do my Zooms from there.
And then, so how does it work technically? Do they all dial in on Zoom? I mean, they're 4 and 5 years old. I guess their parents are helping them, are they, to dial in?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite funny. We've got a superhero theme going at Rowledge to give the parents and the children loads of motivation to work. So we're setting them superhero quests. So generally, the super parents would sign on for the children onto Zoom, sometimes dressed in superhero outfits, as am I, which is amazing, and then either stick around or leave the children to it.
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually, because I was speaking to a teacher last week about this. How do you feel about teaching when you've got the parents potentially there, but you can't see them, or maybe you can see them? I mean, what's it like having to teach children with parents right next to them?
Well, I suppose for some it could be quite daunting, but in reception class we have, not at the moment in the current situation, but generally we have a lot of parents in the classroom and things anyway because of the children's age. So I have so much interaction with the parents anyway that, to be honest, it doesn't really make a difference for me. Obviously we've got some very intellectual parents, and sometimes I do wonder if I'm saying all of the right things, but no, I think the relationship that we've got and how much we see them anyway in the classroom, it's kind of been the norm for me anyway.
How do you handle the muting and unmuting? Do they all mute themselves? I mean, do you find yourself having to tell them midway through a lesson, "Oh, could you take yourself off mute, please"?
Yeah, so that has been a bit of an issue. So it depends really. If it's a discussion in a small group, then I let them all stay off mute, and it's lovely. They all chip in when they want to. If I'm doing something like story time or an input where I'd like them to just be a bit quieter, then I do mute them all, and I feel awful doing it. It's a very strange, surreal experience. Some of the children have worked out how to unmute themselves, which is fun. And some children, when their super parents leave them to it, I'll be asking them a question, but they'll be on mute and they won't be able to unmute themselves. So I've developed a great skill of lip reading to work out what they're saying, even if I can't hear them.
Well, that happens in meetings here where you're trying to talk to someone and you can see them on mute. So I'm not surprised it happens when you're dealing with children as young as 4 and 5. And so how do you handle giving them feedback during a lesson? I mean, what happens if you can see that maybe one of them isn't quite understanding things as well as, say, another one? How do you handle that? Because obviously in a classroom, you've got your teaching assistant, you're able to set some of them work while you go over to some of the others who maybe aren't understanding. How do you handle that over Zoom?
Yeah, so to be honest, that's probably been one of the biggest challenges, is that feeling of it's only me to work with all of these different children at different abilities. We are really lucky that the parents are so hands-on, and generally if you can see that one of the children is a little bit unsure, I can say to them, go and ask super mummy or super daddy or whoever their adult is at home, and generally the parents are brilliant that they will come and help them out and give a little bit of extra support. If not, I will always say to the parent, I'm not quite sure whether your child completely grasped that, please could we go over it in a separate Zoom, and I'll try and can make time to do a more of a one-to-one, or send a video. I quite often pre-record things and send that out to them to make sure that they've completely grasped what it was that they were learning.
Yeah, okay. And so how long do the Zooms go on for?
um, it varies really. Between 5 and 10 minutes is kind of how I'm keeping their attention. I try and make it really engaging with songs, dances, video clips. But when you're 4 and 5, they say their attention span is 4 to 5 minutes. So 10 minutes probably the maximum that I'm going to be able to do it with them.
How does it compare to teaching in the classroom?
It's very different. I think the big thing for me is the resources. It's the plan and the preparation for it is so different to just planning for a normal day in the classroom, because we're so well equipped in the classroom. I find myself walking around my own house thinking, right, for this lesson, what do I have to hand, and what will the children and the families at home have to hand? And that's the big thing that I find is the biggest challenge, is what can they use and how can it be accessible for all? Whereas in the classroom we have all of those resources and we can make sure that every child has exactly the same experience.
And are there any advantages? Is there anything you've gained from being able to do that? I was talking to a teacher last week who was saying that they're actually able to see the children's faces really well by Zoom, because obviously everyone's got the phone or the laptop quite close to them. Is there any other advantages that you can think of?
Yes, yeah, you're right. Being able to see them all, and those smaller group sessions where I'm being able to plan those in throughout the week and really delve deep into what we're learning has been great. Also, our parents are so supportive. So the majority of the children at home are pretty much getting a one-to-one LSA, if not a teacher, sitting with them going through the things that I'm teaching. So that's been a real advantage, is the fact that the parents are so proactive and so keen to help their children to learn, and they're doing such an amazing job. Yeah, it really has been brilliant in that sense.
What are the main drawbacks? You mentioned there's obviously a lot of planning and prep. It's thinking about teaching in a totally different way to what you've been used to in the past.
I suppose the kind of almost the guilt feeling that I want to be there with the children all day, every day. It's quite difficult seeing them over Zoom and not being able to physically be there to help them and have that holding hand physically. And the sense of they're doing so much and they're so proud of their work, and I'm only feeling like I'm seeing just a little glimpse of what they're doing. I wish there was more hours in the day to sit with them all one-to-one and see exactly what they've been up to, because they're doing so much.
That's Josh Searle speaking to primary school teachers in Surrey on what it's like to teach using Zoom and other video services.